Just want to confirm, 24 of you have hit that subscribe button since, obviously, me being here on YouTube talk about professional wrestling. Finally got the number right. Because of my last upload, I didn't get it right. I do apologise. And welcome to today's upload. Now, I want to talk about Money in the Bank. We are just over 8 days away from it already? Shitting hell, that's come around quick. But what I want to actually say to you guys is, I wanted to talk about this the other day, but didn't get around to because I had enough to deal with, obviously, on my plate, being a professional wrestling fan. Now, I want to talk about it today because it's like the eve of SmackDown. You know, we're going into SmackDown. Yay. The thing is that I saw reports, but I'm taking these as reports, that Triple H doesn't like the concept of Money in the Bank. I just want to point this out, Trips. You're entitled to your opinions. At least if you're honest, you're honest. But I'm taking this as a pinch of salt because it's coming from the dirt. But if it's true, you possibly, I would say my top 4 pay-per-views of the year do look forward to, if it's done right, is Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, Money in the Bank, Extreme Rules. They're my top 4. Would have been SummerSlam, but I don't know how this SummerSlam's going to be. That's my 5. You know? But you got to look at it this way. Trips is running things. I get that. He's booking things. I get that. People say he's looking lazy booking. I kind of agree. This past few weeks that we've actually had going into the road to Money in the Bank. But the one thing that really frustrates me about it, even though he's entitled to his opinions, I'm not going to give him stick for it, but I just want to point this out. Is he going to get rid of the ladder concept and bring in something like the Ultimate X match they've got in TNA to the WWE main roster? That will be an element of surprise that I could actually say, yeah, Trips, bring it on. Bring it on, if that comes in. But I feel like with the situation that he's put himself in, is how he's put these triple threat qualified matches. Yeah, there could be filler matches. Yeah, granted. I could state they are filler matches just to fill in the void where you're building just Seth Rollins up as a lead character. You're building up Solo Sikoa as a lead character. I look at the way you've done Seth, Bronson Reed. Technically, no one needed that. You needed someone else, I would say, and that's just me being honest. You look at the likes of the way Braun Breaker's been brought in, fair enough. But the catch is that Paul Heyman's doing all the work. And yet you not even gave them a new theme music. If they want to make an impact, would have been nice if they had a little bit of new theme, you know. For both groups. Like Solo Sikoa with the likes of Jacob Fatu and, lo and behold, JC Mateo. It would be nice, you know. Give it that. If you are building up with the way I feel like you're building up these teams and that lot, but there's not that much to it, right? But I think this has shown how I feel for Trips, to be honest, and I'm not being horrible or anything. That these Money in the Bank matches that we've actually had for numerous of weeks now, and we're on the eve of SmackDown, you've only got 8 days from today to, is it 8 days or 9 days? Well, either way, when Money in the Bank is on, you have literally had these matches, these triple threat qualifying matches. Don't get me wrong, they are filler. But the problem where I feel it lies is where Triple H is not even realised what he's done, but he has realised. The reason why I feel like people are complaining about the Money in the Bank prices, even though it's been complained for numerous weeks now, is what you are looking forward to seeing the end product of what Money in the Bank has come as. And that's just me being honest with you. Because even though you've had these build towards triple threat matches, you've technically had no build towards your main event other than Saturday night main event. You've relied on too much Becky and Lyra to build the women's IC title. That's another spot. So that's 2 matches already gone. Then you've got the 2 Money in the Bank matches. That makes 4 matches. Pretty much confirmed for the PLE. Who's going to take the last spot if Triple H is only doing 5? If he's ended up doing 4, that makes it even more worse. And then probably a cash in, like I've said in one of my previous videos, a cash in on the tag team match, that will probably make it the 5th. This is why I feel like Money in the Bank is going to get hurt and make it a lot worse pay-per-view on my top 5. You know, I look at Money in the Bank as an opportunity for the next face of the company. You know, because I feel like it needs a new face. And I'm not saying Seth's not doing a bad job, or Solo Sikoa doing a bad job, but you got to remember John Cena is retiring at the end of the year, and the whole weight is on someone's shoulders to take over from him. Even though yes, it's obviously it's going to be Cody, but I want someone else. You know, and it's really hard when you look at the current roster. And I want to say this. You are bringing up females to the main roster. Stephanie Valkyra, Joanne Grace, and you are literally putting them in the deep end. And same as Ricky Starks. Because you're already putting them in the deep end doing that already. Bringing up, yeah, you may bring up fresh new faces that are coming into the company. Job well done to the main roster. I give them credit for doing that, but at the wrong time, no, I don't give them credit for it. Because your current roster's in a mess. You know, you're hardly using CM Punk, and he's one of the biggest stars you've got. This is where it baffles me, where you're literally going into a PLE next week. Is it next week? Yeah, it is next week. You are going into it next week with 4 matches already confirmed. You've had no build towards anything towards your tag team division to be elevated into, I would say, that PLE. You've got nothing towards your male's US title. Same with your women's US title. You've already got your main event titles covered for the males, but what about the women's? You know, the Raws, the SmackDown titles, and the US title. This is the problem where it lies, that you've already got these roster members. Yes, roster members. That I feel like you don't know what to do with it. You got too many already on the main roster. That's why I feel like you should have brought them up so soon. It doesn't need it as such, but I feel like going blindsided towards Money in the Bank at the moment, I'm like, if Trips does 5 matches, this is another one that's going to suffer. It's the same thing with WrestleMania. Same thing probably with SummerSlam. It's going to suffer. And I've said this already with the ticket prices. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but for the price you want fans to pay, and you are giving them 5 matches, no. This is why I did my video about AEW pay-per-views. People complaining it was too long, but has it come to the norm that people want shorter PLEs for more for the price, but not for the value? I feel sorry for these people that actually are working for WWE at the moment. You know, and it's mental. You know, it's bad enough. Recently, there's been reports that they don't want fans swearing in the attendance in their shows when it's live on TV because they hate messing around with the audio because it ruins the flow of the show. No, the commercial breaks ruin the flow of the show. But it really, really does frustrate me to think a company like... People may think I'm critiquing. I'm not critiquing. I'm just stating facts. That people used to use wrestling away from escapism, from reality, so they could like cheer the heels or boo the heels or boo the faces or cheer the faces, you know, because people have different ways of doing it in wrestling shows, you know. And I feel like the reason why you are telling fans not to swear, because you know you full well you're going to get backlash live on broadcast what your product is at the moment. You know, this is why I've been on YouTube and I've seen people critique so much in WWE, which you would not expect from the company that's meant to be been around for years. You know? And they're more supportive towards AEW. Even though I've been watching AEW since the beginning. You know? Die-hard fan, you might want to say. I don't get a chance to watch Collision. I used to try and watch Rampage. It just mainly focused on Dynamite. And I feel like with Dynamite, it gives the entity of ruthless aggression. It gives you part of the Attitude Era. It gives you part of ECW. You know, he has those elements that has worked in wrestling history should work today in professional wrestling. You know, I feel like when I feel like today's entity of WWE is a lower rating than when Vince was in power with the PG era. I feel like this has gone to an U or an E. You know, because I'm not being funny. You look at the likes of Becky and Lyra. Yeah, fair enough. They're great Irish women. They're fantastic in the ring. But with their promo work, we've seen better than that. They're so... I'm not being funny. If they were real... I'm not saying they're not women, but if you know what I mean. If they were women, you might want to say... out and about in a nightclub. You really think they're going to be talking the way they've been talking? No. You wouldn't. You know, it doesn't have that natural feel. And that's what I feel like WWE is missing as of late. The natural feeling towards the promos and everything. Because the one thing that really is niggling away at me, I don't see Paul Heyman being the mouthpiece for Seth. I feel like Seth needs to be himself. But the thing is with Paul Heyman, he's got to think of new, fresh ideas to keep people interested in a trio between Seth, Braun Breaker, and the likes of Bronson Reed. He's got to do the work for them. That shouldn't be happening. Seth should be the one that's doing the talking. That's why I've said since WrestleMania that Seth is the one that does not need a mouthpiece. You know? It just niggles away at me. You know? That people... I just want to say this. That the wrestlers that used to work the independent scene, let's just say, that have made it to the big time, you could easily bring that entity to your repertoire, what you already know. Why do you think the likes of Kevin Owens was always outspoken and felt so natural when he was literally brawling and the way he was doing promos? That's why people backed him. The same with The Miz, believe it or not. He's such a better natural speaker, you know, because he turns heads when he gets going. You know, that's what I miss, passionate promos. to sell as feuds that's going off. But how can you sell the feuds when you're literally, how to put it, doing random spots, yeah, fair enough, to build up this random ass storyline that's going off, but then you're filling it up with triple threat matches for the Money in the Bank. That's the problem where I feel that WWE have lost structure to their programming. And that's a massive thing to lose. What fans crave for. It really it angers me. Oh, I nearly had a burp or a hiccup there. I do apologise. But you gotta think, right? You meant to get people your butts in seats. The prices you are charging now. I look at the people who rave about this era, right? I say elements from the Attitude Era worked on certain matches. Some of the storylines didn't, but the matches more or less delivered. Why do you think you can't replicate WrestleMania 17? Because the storylines were right, the matches felt right, the passion in the matches felt right, and WWE's lost that. Why do you think people still say that's the best WrestleMania of all time? Even the music was right. You captivated the time period that worked for your wrestlers. Everyone from top to bottom of that card stood out, one after the other, after the other, after the other. That's why I feel like the likes of AEW Double or Nothing 2025 has been one of my favourite pay-per-views that AEW's put on. I don't look to the likes of, how to put it, WWE's current product, and I think, I know this sounds a bit not as a biased opinion, this is just me being honest, that I look at the way your current product is, and I feel like, how do I dare say it? This reminds what TNA used to do, and what they used to do when Hulk Hogan was around. People don't realise I got into TNA from the beginning as well. I fell out of love with it because of the different platforms it kept going on. And then obviously I started working when that was on, so I lost track where I was and never watched it since. But it just feels so forced, not so natural, and that's what annoys me. Even though TNA back then, when Hulk Hogan was around, you had clinic of matches, you had decent wrestlers on there, but they didn't know how to handle them to a point, because always Hogan was hogging the spotlight. This is the same problem with the likes of Seth at the moment. He's hogging the spotlight. What is overshadowing what's going off? Same with Becky. She's trying to hog the spotlight. At least one, she's with Lyra. Them two are good feud, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it. But it just feels forced. Like, we have to like that match. But with me, I like that match. Not many people are talking about it because it's overlooked because of how short Backlash was. This is why I feel when I look at Money in the Bank and I'm thinking, 4 year match is already gone. Who's going to take the 5th spot? Is it going to be Seth? Maybe with Sami Zayn? I don't know, because you've been building these up for numerous of weeks. Are you going to put... But the problem is Seth's in the Money in the Bank match. What are you actually going to do? I'm just... If there's no cash in at Money in the Bank between the tag team match, I feel like if there is going to be a cash in, it's going to be annoying because if Seth ends up being the winner, he's going to cash it on Jey Uso. Or is CM Punk going to come out again and literally interfere with that match so it's a false cash in, so you're going to waste what you've been building up for numerous of weeks? That's the way I feel like it's going to go. And you want people to pay for that. The reason why I feel like the prices have gone up so high is because you've gone to this Netflix deal, even though you got $10 billion to show WWE for 10 years. I feel like because you're not getting any buy rates on your pay-per-views, you're not technically getting that much as you thought. But you look at the way currently, how much Money in the Bank is in a mess. I thought back when COVID times, I thought Money in the Bank could have suffered a lot. But it didn't. Believe it or not, Vince thought of a decent new way of fresh identity. Put it on top of a WWE headquarters on the roof. Make it a fun show. Believe it or not, I had more fun time watching Monday Night Raw and SmackDown and NXT. I think that was technically when I last watched NXT. I can't remember. But COVID times, believe it or not, was a fun time to watch WWE. You know, it's highly underrated, I feel, because Vince made a unique way of Money in the Bank. Made it fresh entity on top of WWE headquarters. You know? Yes, there's a lot of rumours I've saw about Vince wants to buy WWE back, but he can't afford to buy WWE back. And I'm thinking, I'd say that is hearsay. But you gotta admit to yourself, minus what Vince has been allegations against, the same time as P. Diddy. You know? You gotta know the fact with Vince that, but you kind of accept it more because of what you saw on his storylines, what he thought of. Now it's in reality, people want to bash him for it. You know, it really confuses me the way people think at times. You know, we know full well, old school fans like myself that was born in the 80s, know full well Vince was not squeaky clean. Neither was none of the wrestlers on his roster that he had. But when we look at the way they've changed the generations in the wrestling world, that I look at the way WWE is now, I feel like the Attitude Era was fun to watch, less pay-per-views to watch, but still knew how to build them. Attitude Era had some good elements. Don't get me wrong, like I've mentioned. Ruthless Aggression, I feel like that was technically highly underrated, because I look at the way it. That's what I mean. You literally had decent stuff that we've witnessed over the years. And I feel like the WWE Network should be still around, not on Netflix. How to put it? Even do this merger with TKO, you could have made it all in-house. Obviously for the UK fans, and then gradually move it to the network when it runs out of deals on the other network providers that has WWE around the world. You know, to their countries. What was the point of taking off all the product that you actually had on the WWE network to go on Netflix? Just WWE, even though, yeah, fair enough, you've done WCW YouTube channel. You haven't done an ECW one yet. But that's what I mean. I feel like with the... Do we blame TKO for everything that we're getting at the moment? Partially. But yeah, fair enough. Everything's done in wrestling before. We all know this. but it just don't feel so natural anymore. You know? You look at Judgment Day, like I've mentioned in the previous video. You look at what you've done with your new signees to your Raw roster. You put them in with Judgment Day. It just really confuses the hell out of me. You know? I'm worried for the likes of Stephanie Valkyra. I'm worried for Jordan Grace. I'm worried for Ricky Saint, or whatever he's classed as. You know, if he's meant to be going up to the main roster. Because, I'm not being funny, at the moment, no fresh faces needed on both Raw or SmackDown. They should stay in NXT, because I feel like the main roster, they wouldn't know what to do with them. You know, it stresses me out just thinking about it. And then like I've been mentioning about the Money in the Bank PLE. This is not going to work. You know, and that's just me being honest. Does he need to scrap it all together? You know? Where could any build towards any storylines if they were doing Hell in a Cell this day and age? They don't do that anymore as a PLE, which is a bonus. You know, because that used to have the art of surprise. Same with the TLC pay-per-view. You know, I'm literally dumbfounded. I don't even know if Extreme Rules is going to happen this year. You know, but the problem where it lies, Saudi Arabia, right, has 9 champions. How are you going to put 9 champions when all belts are meant to be on the line for 9 champions when you only do 5 matches? You know? It worries me when I think about it. Because you look, if he doesn't like the concept of Money in the Bank, how are you going to like the concept of 9 champions? You'll have your Raw champion, you'll have your SmackDown champion. That's 2 spots, probably. Then your mid-card titles. And they say, I've seen people say, AEW's got too many belts. So is WWE, because at the moment, like I said, 5 matches per PLE is not going to work when it comes to something like this as well. It's just, that's why I feel like WWE's in a mess. And I'm not bashing it because I watch AEW. No, I'm saying this because fans need to realise how much of a mess it really is. It dumbfounds me. It dumbfounds me to think about it even now. But anyway, I'm going off now, guys. I've said too much, I know, but I hope you hear my point of view on this. But until next time, I mean, catch you guys soon.